see a company here on Richo.
And
I want to keep establishing that name here, Richo and Jones.
I was going to put a line through the Richo, but we've got a very special guest here and a very special guest in the studio in Melbourne. Dr. Patrick Moore here is the co-founder of Greenpeace, and in fact was for some time a significant figure in the Greenpeace international movement, Save the Whales and all the rest of it, but left Greenpeace some years ago because of its anti-science approach. And I thought we'd be able to tonight hear views from men from different ends of the spectrum, so to speak. So if we could just start with Dr. Patrick Moore here. 18 years since there's been any warming of the globe. What's everyone going on about?
Well, it's quite spectacular, actually, because there was a lot of concern that the world would warm if we kept pouring carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And even though in the last 18 years, 25% of all the CO2 that humans have ever put into the atmosphere has gone in there, there has been no significant warming of the world's climate. And so, therefore, it brings into serious question whether or not there really is a strong relationship between carbon dioxide and warming of the Earth's atmosphere.
Well, that's a pretty good start.
Well, there's a start, but let's hear the
Professor Erwin Jackson is in our Melbourne studio. I just wonder, Erwin, what's your response to that? Is the Earth warming?
Well, it is, and there's no doubt about that, really. If you look at the observational record, you look at what's happening to our ice sheets, you look at what's happening in the oceans, there's all clear evidence that the world is warming. Yes, the rate of warming has slowed in the last few years. It hasn't been as rapid as it has been previously. But there are potentially very good reasons for that. We have natural variability in the climate system. We also are seeing some parts of the ocean heating up quite significantly. So the extra energy we're trapping in the Earth system is going to different places, not just into our surface temperature.
But could we just make the point that Professor has made?
I also think it's important. Yeah.
Just the point that you made there, and here, Dr. Moore, now you said there is no doubt that the globe is warming, and you talked about the ice sheets and so on. You would contest that, wouldn't you?
Well, I would say that I think you would agree, Owen, that the Antarctic ice is at the highest level it's been. The sea ice around Antarctica is more extensive than it has been since we started measuring it in 1979. If you add the area of sea ice around Antarctica with the area of sea ice in the Arctic, there's actually no trend whatsoever since 1979. It's about the same as it was then. And when you say it's slowing down, it's actually slowed down to zero, which is what we call the pause. And the IPCC agrees with that. The East Anglia University agrees with that.
I'm sorry, Patrick, that's actually not what the IPCC say.
Yes,
that's
what Victoria has said.
The last 3 decades have been the warmest on record, and they've been warmer than everyone before it. They also say that the global increase in temperature has increased over the period you're talking about. Yes, not as quickly as it had in the previous period, but they've also said it's actually increases. So it's actually incorrect to say, if you look at the full body of the IPCC work to suggest that the world isn't warming. And yes, the parts of the Antarctic, have a higher level of sea ice than they have in the past, and there's good reason for that, because the global climate is changing, which is promoting greater winds, which is promoting greater ice build-up in certain parts of the Antarctic.
But can we just get one fact so we know what we're talking about here? I'm utterly confused, and we've only been going in for 5 minutes. Has the Earth warmed in the last 18 years or not? Let's hear from both men. Firstly, Dr. Moore.
Well, the satellite record shows zero warming in the last 18 years, despite the fact that 1/4 of all the CO2 we have ever emitted, because of the rapidly increasing rate of CO2 emissions from China and Russia and Indonesia and India and the United States and around the world, has happened in the last 18 years. So there's a tremendous disconnect between the rate of carbon dioxide buildup in the atmosphere and the warming, which has essentially disappeared, gone to zero in the last 18 years.
Professor's answer to that.
Well, first of all, I'm actually not a professor.
You can be for one night. Bet you might tell our viewers what exactly your position is, Erwin.
I'm Deputy CEO at the Climate Institute.
Right.
So the core issue is that Patrick's entitled to his opinion. As the public and as policymakers and the media commentators, we need to make a judgment based on the evidence, and I think everyone would agree with that. If you look at the evidence that's put forward by CSIRO, NASA, every major research institution on the planet, they've all come to basically the same conclusion, that the world is continuing to warm, albeit not as fast as it was, and that human activities is the principal cause behind that. Now, Patrick is absolutely right. He's completely entitled to his opinion, but if you're making policy and you're making judgments about the future of our energy mix, you don't base it on the opinion of one person. You base it on the overwhelming evidence that's before you, which has been given to us by the scientific community.
Can I ask you just specifically, in this 18 years, I don't know why we're talking about 18 years and no longer, but we're talking about this 18 years, in terms of surface temperatures, have they gone up, have they gone down, or have they remained static?
They've gone up, but they haven't gone up as fast as they were in the previous decade. And part of the reason for that is 1998, in the year we're talking about, was an extremely hot year. And funnily enough, it looks like this year will actually be the hottest year on record based on the observations that we're seeing in the climate system at the moment. So I look forward to people who keep saying that the world has stopped warming to say, well, when this year turns out probably to be the hottest on record, that warming has started again.
Erwin, I don't know, you blokes have sort of learned all this stuff off, and you say, well, if I keep repeating it often enough, someone will believe me. You mentioned NASA. I've got a quote here from NASA. In the 21st century, greenhouse gases have continued to accumulate in the atmosphere, just as they did in the 20th century, but global average surface temperatures have stopped rising in tandem with the gases. Dr. Moore, is that what you were saying?
Exactly.
So, I mean, what do you
The issue is, I think we need to disconnect two issues here. One is absolutely right. The level of emissions that we're putting into the atmosphere from carbon pollution has been increasingly very rapidly in the last few years. Surface temperature, based on all the evidence that's been put forward by the international community, are increasing. But that doesn't mean to say other things aren't happening at the moment. But we've created a change in the LNG balance of the climate system, which is the equivalent, roughly, of detonating about 4 atomic bombs about the size of Hiroshima every second. That heat and energy has to go somewhere. Some of it's going into the surface temperature, some of it's going into the ocean, some of it's melting ice. And the overall picture is very clear.
That is a seriously silly analogy to talk about Hiroshima bombs exploding. What you're saying is that you believe that more heat is coming into the Earth's system, and you don't know where it's going. Some people are saying it's in the deep ocean. Now it's hiding in the deep ocean. That's where they've postulated it must be going, because it's not warming the atmosphere. But the fact is, it's possible that heat is actually not coming in to the Earth's atmosphere because climate sensitivity to carbon dioxide is nowhere near as much as people thought before. And many people are now beginning to think that the positive feedbacks that they were building into these computer models are wrong, and there may in fact be a negative feedback to CO2 increase. All else being equal, it is true that carbon dioxide would cause some warming. But what if the water vapor actually suppresses the CO2's impact? Because all else is not equal. There are many factors at work here, and the Earth is not warming at the present time.
I don't understand what we're talking about, because it just as takes CO2, carbon dioxide, and 97% of it is naturally occurring. The issue here is we are blaming human beings for the incidence of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, when the world of human beings produces 3% of carbon dioxide. God knows what minuscule amount Australia produces, but as a result, we've had a wrongly called a carbon tax. We're not talking about carbon, we're talking about carbon dioxide, but it's called a carbon tax. We've got a carbon tax, we've got renewable energy targets, we've got wind turbines being subsidised by taxpayers, all because of this hoax that man is producing carbon dioxide, which is spoiling the atmosphere, when it's utter right in saying that both men, only about 3% of it is created by human beings.
Erwin, can you give us an answer?
I think it sort of slightly misses the point, to be honest. Like, the core issue is that, yes, natural systems release carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, and yes, natural systems absorb those gases. The core issue is that we've knocked that system out of balance. And there's absolutely no doubt, because we can measure it. We can measure it fairly directly by looking at the atmospheric chemistry, that the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and other greenhouse gases are probably the highest they've ever been in the last 800,000 years. And we can see quite clearly that that's a result, because of the isotopes associated with that, that's mainly from the burning of fossil fuels. There's no doubt about it. Even the most hardened climate skeptic who's a serious climate scientist would never doubt that. The core issue is we've knocked the system out of balance, and we're the people
piece of rhetoric, that you people keep repeating like some biblical truth. But isn't it true, Dr. Moore, if I could say to you, one of the real issues for the viewers out there is that our kids at school are being taught that carbon dioxide is a pollutant.
Yes, and as if there was a balance, so-called balance in the first place. The climate has been changing throughout the history of the Earth, and there's never been anything that you could call a balance. In fact, carbon dioxide is actually lower now than it has been through the entire history of modern life, which goes back not 800,000 years, but 500 million years. Carbon dioxide has been higher, and also the temperature of the Earth today, we're actually in the Pleistocene Ice Age still. This is an interglacial period, but we are in a very cold period of the Earth's history today. It's 14.5 degrees Celsius average global temperature. Most of life's history has been up in the 20s somewhere, so much higher than it is today. But the big lie, and the really important fact, is to call carbon dioxide a pollutant and to teach our children this is heresy, because carbon dioxide is the most important nutrient food for all life on Earth. We are carbon-based life. All life is carbon-based. Where does that carbon come from? CO2 in the atmosphere, nowhere else. And in fact, plants would rather have carbon dioxide 3 to 4 times higher than it is today. It's 400 parts per million now. The optimum CO concentration for plant growth is between 1,200 and 1,600 parts per million. That is an incontrovertible fact. That is why glasshouse growers purposely put the exhaust from their heaters, which is rich in CO2 from their wood and gas heaters, into the greenhouse to increase the concentration 2, 3, 4 times, to increase the growth of the fruits and vegetables they have in there by 50 to 100%. And we know that today the Earth is greening. Everybody out there, Google greening of the Earth, and you will find a map that shows you that photosynthesis is increasing all over the planet, and that we are getting greener, our crops are growing faster, our forests are growing faster. This is a fact. CO2 is not pollution.
I need to have some response here, but look, if it's going to take a while, we might go to a break. I think it might just hold that thought. We'll go to a break now because I think you're going to spend a minute or two in giving us a proper answer. So we should be back in just a moment. I can't wait for the answer to this one.